hariya ni ahantu hafashwe kare cyane kandi abasirikare bahita bahava vuba cyane kubera ko intambara yari ikomeje kuko abasirikare bahise bahava bamanuka bajya kwatakinga kami. Urumva rero nta mbaraga zasigaye hariya zisigara zishakisha abantu bavuga ngo babice. Giti buri abantu niba hari n'umwana bapfuye birashoboka simbihakana baba ari bakeya, ariko niba banaharemwe n'abapfuye kuko muziha bivuga hari nk'abahutu baba barapfuye ubwo baba bariko n'abasigaye b'inkotanyi kuko nta mutwe wishe umuhutu mwene wabo. Oya, niba bahari koko, ariko nk'abo njya numva bakunda kuvuga cyane ngo abapadiri bo ku iseminari abo ngabo bashobora kuba bishwe n'abasigaye b'inkotanyi kuko bari hamwe n'intera hamwe n'abajandarume. Abo rero ntabwo navuga ngo mirongo nta nibwo ari 90%, 100% bashobora kuba barishwe n'abasirikare kuko byarumvikanaga ko bagomba n'abajandarume bararwanye gatoya, ariko bari bakeya ntabwo bari benshi. Ari nk'abajandarume nk'icumi ntabwo bashobora kurwana n'abasirikare 60, ntabwo byashoboka. Urumva kandi bari bana bagose. Ariko byo gupfa byo abaturage bagiye bapfa igihugu cyose butareza ahantu hose mu gihugu hose. Urupfu bapfuyemo abantu bararuzi, ntabwo ari ngombwa kumeza tubisobanura ngo abantu babivuga buri munsi nanjye ngo nabivuze. Urupfu abantu barapfuye abatutsi barapfuye bishwe n'abahutu babarenganya. Ikindi seri ariko n'ikintu abantu kwiye ko kuzamenya buriya mujya mumenye neza yuko no mu gihe cy'icyunamo bayize tunabivuga abatutsi bapfuye bazira ubusa kuko ntacyo bari bakoze, bararenganye cyane. Ariko abantu bibagirwa yuko inkotanyi 99.99% bari abatutsi, kandi muri abo ngabo 80% bari abasirikare bari baravuye mu Rwanda. Ubwo ngubu harije mwumva abantu bumva abahutu bumvaga ngo bisha abantu baza abatutsi niho bafashe ubutegetsi baraje barabarebye ngo thank you ngo mwakoze neza. Reka da, ni uko tuvuga nk'iyo abatutsi bica bari kwica abahutu noneho abahutu bakaba ari bafata leta bari kugenda gute? Ahubwo ngiye mbona hari ikintu ngiye ntandukanaho n'abandi bantu. Buriya mbona abahutu bakwiye kuzagorora Kagame kuko buriya Kagame hari ikintu yafashije abahutu n'ubu baracyakibafasha. Hari ikintu yakore. Ese buriya Kagame yataza ko ari umuperezida w'imbwa wikunda w'umuswa akaba perezida mwiza. Ubungubu ugira ngo ubungubu abanyarwanda bafite amahoro batuje, abahutu bose bari mu gihugu ariko bumva neza yuko abanyarwanda bangana kandi nta n'umwe akwiye kwicungira, nta n'umwe akwiye gupfa, baba babizi. Ariko ubungubu noneho n'abishe bumva yuko barenganye kandi barishe. Abatarishe ahubwo barafunzwe bazira ubusa. Abishe barahunga barashiza inzira kare. Ubu wambwira gute ukuntu generali ajya hari akavuga ngo jenoside yabaye mu murenge mu karere ndimwo ari generali afite abasirikari 1000 yarayiza akagororerwa hagati ndibira akwiye ko ari mu buroko, ntabwo yakwiye ko ahantu aho ngaho. Ariko aya Kagame abahutu yarabafashije sizimbo bamwanga.
The Australian Defence Force was providing medical support to the United Nations Assistance Mission to Rwanda following the Rwandan genocide. Paul Jordan is one of the highly trained elite SAS forces deployed in Rwanda at the time. His section was tasked to support and protect a small Australian medical team sent to the Kibeo IDP or internally displaced people's camp in the south of Rwanda, a camp that was about to be closed.
We arrived as a part of the second contingent in February 1995, and we took up residence at the hospital and started providing care for those who were injured. We were then told in April that the camp at Kibeo was to be closed, And our job was to go there and document those who might be injured, provide care where we could while people were being repatriated to their villages.
Behind the official IDP repatriation operation that started on the 18th of April and ended tragically on the 22nd of April 1995, there was another unspecified agenda. George Gitos is an Australian artist and filmmaker. He was on a mission to document the deployment of Australian forces in Rwanda in 1995. A seasoned investigative documentary maker, George Gitos had learnt about the other possible motives of the Kibeho IDP repatriation operation.
Before I left Kigali, I'd been briefed on the likelihood that there would be a retaliatory massacre at Kibeho. So I came in very aware and alert. I came in vehicles of Australian infantry soldiers who were supporting a medical, setting up a field hospital run by Captain Carol Vaughan-Evans.
But George Gitos didn't have to wait long to witness the other aspect of the repatriation operation.
The first sign of this was watching the RPA clear the villages and the hills around it, people being forced out, and as they ran, they were made to run. They'd shoot them, and they did it in a grotesque way. They'd shoot them in the leg and then laugh at them and watch them try to get up and eventually put a bullet in their head or somewhere fatal.
The internally displaced people had nowhere to run. They were completely surrounded by heavily armed and trigger-happy Rwandan Patriotic Army troops. Moreover, as Paul Jordan recalls, armed militias within the camp were also busy doing their own killing.
The Rwandans had machine guns, they had mortars, all set up ready to mow these people down, and which they did. And while this was going on, there were also people running within these poor people with machetes, with their own weapons, and killing them from within as well. So these displaced persons were getting hit from both sides, from the army and from the militia within the camp.
In the midst of this carnage, one would wonder whether there were any attempts to intercede. Paul Jordan recalls that there were numerous initiatives from Australian forces and other parties to stop the killing, but their calls fell in deaf ears.
It was coming from the UN, it was coming from our command element, and we had one signaller who spent his entire time on that radio maintaining communications and reporting back exactly what was going on. But it was also our officers within our small group who were pleading with the Rwandan Patriotic Army officers, a major in particular, that this had to stop. And it was to the point where it was a horrible set of circumstances, and some of the events leading up were refugees displaced persons who knew that things were going bad and would make a run for it. And one or two soldiers would give chase. Rwandan Patriotic Army soldiers would give chase, fire a few shots, wing this poor guy, and then proceed to bayonet him to death. The countless events that took place where innocent people were murdered and executed in front of us, and not only myself but everybody who was involved in that those couple of days stood up to Rwandan soldiers and said, no, if we were given the opportunity, we did that, and mostly we were successful. But sometimes you just weren't there on time.
Faced with mounting casualties and a situation of total helplessness, there was increased pressure on the Australian medical team to leave Kibeho altogether. But in true Anzac spirit, the small Australian medical contingent decided to continue their mission of saving internally displaced people's lives despite putting their own lives at risk. George Gitos recalls those moments of extraordinary courage.
The RPA's commander came up and said to Carol Vaughan-Evans, you can't go back, we're going to finish them off. That is, kill the people that the Australians have been treating. Carol made an amazing decision. She said, no, we're going back. And so under heavy machine gun fire, and it seemed like all the Australians would be killed in the process of trying to save these people they'd become attached to, they went back and got them. I helped, and which meant tripping through razor wire and stuff to get these people out, and bullets flying everywhere.
At the end of more than 4 days of killings, the counting of casualties was to become one of the most controversial events surrounding the United Nations intervention in Rwanda. Paul Jordan and his team were asked to count for the United Nations the number of victims. They provided a partial tally of more than 4,000 victims. But the Rwandan government disputed this figure. According to Kigali, 4 days of unabated killings resulted in only 338 casualties. Human rights organizations and many scholars believe that the tally is much higher. their figures vary between 10,000 and 15,000 people killed in a matter of 4 days only.
I was in fact charged by the UN and along with another officer to take half a section of infantry soldiers and move around each side of the camp and count the dead bodies. And this took place the day after the massacre. And we walked along with pace counters and we counted every body that we found. But I looked at things a little bit differently. I recognised that by being there and bearing witness to what had taken place, they were either going to have to kill all of us as well to take that, to clear that evidence from their slate, or they had to stop what they were doing. And, they didn't kill 120,000. I believe the count was somewhere between 4,000 and 10,000. I would say closer to 10,000.
The Kibero massacre is admittedly the worst carnage that Australian troops have been exposed to since the Second World War. And in a rare move, the Australian Defence Force upgraded the mission to Rwanda from peacekeeping mission to active duty mission. And George Gitos is the recipient of the 2015 Sydney Peace Prize in recognition for, amongst other things, 45 years as a humanist, artist, activist and filmmaker, and also for his courage to witness and confront violence in the war zones of the world.